Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. It is Monday, January 20th, and we have a great show for you. First, the prosecutor needs another 4 to 6 months to collect all the evidence in the Mickey Stines case. New polls show that, people are very sympathetic to Luigi Mangione. The Biden family gets a pardon. Really, nearly every immediate family member to President Biden got a pardon for crimes committed going as far back as 2014. Do you need a pardon if no crime has been committed? How many times have I said your phone is the most compelling evidence against you? Let me give you another example. Jennifer Crumbley's attorney says the prosecution did her dirty. A break in the case of a real estate agent found dead in North Carolina. Give me my TikTok or I will burn the building down. No joking. We have this day in legal history and our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it.
Hi, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Like if you do. Leave me a comment below. And yes, hit that little bell so that you receive notifications of when we go live or put up new content. And as always, remember, you can check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps as well. All right, today is January 20th, 2025. It is a national holiday, state holiday, at least where I am, for Martin Luther King Day. It is also Inauguration Day. So you may say, why are you so casual today, Scott? Well, it is about almost 2:30 Mountain Time, and guess what? It's 8 degrees. And when I left the house this morning, it was negative 8 degrees. Didn't have to go to court. We went casual. We went warm. All right, before we get to the docket, please go to crimetalksearch.com. Sign up for that background subscription service. When you do, you're going to be happy that you did because you're going to be able to do a background search on as many people as your heart desires. People coming into your life, maybe people you don't want coming into your life. You can go check them out. Give you a reason to justify them not coming into your life. When you do that background search, you get a report literally completed and emailed to you while you wait, and it's going to have everything you want to know about this person. It's going to give you all kinds of information, even about their social media presence and what emails are associated with that. So if you say, ask your spouse, why do you have 7 email addresses when I only know of 1? Could it be they're on all those dating websites? Go to crimetalksearch.com. It may lead you to answers that you may want to know about. All right, let's go ahead and open the record for January 20th, 2025. First, the Mickey Stines case. Now, the defense team representing the Kentucky sheriff, who allegedly, although it's pretty clear he did it, who shot a judge in the chambers last year, says they are reviewing voluminous amounts of evidence. That's right. The former Letcher County Sheriff, Shawn Mickey Stines, is obviously sitting in custody after being arrested for murder of the Letcher County District Judge, Kevin Mullins, back on September 19th of 2024. Now, Stines was indicted by a grand jury on one count of murder of a public official, to which he's obviously pled not guilty. No word yet whether that is going to be a death penalty case, because death of a public servant, well, we can't have people doing that, right? Anyway, the former sheriff's defense attorney, this Jeremy Bartley guy, had a remote hearing last Friday, and it says that the defense is reviewing voluminous amounts of potential evidence provided by the prosecutors. Now, prosecutors say they may take another 4 to 6 months to collect all the potential evidence and complete any testing of items of evidentiary value, according to the prosecutors. What the hell have they been doing since September? It's on video, for God's sakes. What could there possibly be? I guess they're talking about all the the electronic data that may be coming from all parties involved. But normally, that's pretty quick to do a quick dump. It's going through all of the information that takes a while. But 4 to 6 more months? Are you kidding me? Anyway, the prosecutors say they still have some things coming and things are being tested. Now, Stines, who appeared remotely from the jail on Friday for this video court appearance, didn't show a whole lot of emotion as he sat behind his lawyer in that small little room, trying to all fit into the screen there. Anyway, Stines' attorneys also indicated that they plan to attack the bond to be set at the next hearing, which is yet to be scheduled. Now, the judge, this Judge Cochran, who was appointed last month as a special judge in the case, said that he would be glad to address the bond at that next hearing. Now, Bartley, the attorney for Stein, said the matter of Stein's bond's release has been in limbo until Judge Cochran's appointment to the case. Now, Stines, who was a sheriff at the time, has been accused of fatally shooting Judge Mullins, who died at the scene. And obviously, it was caught on video showing the sheriff shoot the judge. He pulled out a gun and shot him as he sat at his desk and then tried to hide under his desk. Pretty cold-blooded if you think about it. Anyway, the man, then the sheriff, then walked around the desk and fired the gun again once the judge had fallen to the floor. Now, Stines allegedly entered the courthouse and told others that he needed to speak with the judge alone. Once in the chambers, the two began arguing and Mullins was shot several times. Well, we know that because it was on video, which has been released because it was played at the preliminary hearing. Now, he was said to have surrendered to law enforcement, and now he's currently being held at the Kentucky County Jail. Now, Stines did step down from his position as sheriff shortly after the incident, as well he should have, and just days prior to the shooting, Stines had been deposed in a separate federal lawsuit filed by a former inmate who claimed that the deputy sheriff that worked for Stines was using his position to pressure women into having sex in exchange for favorable treatment. Nothing has indicated that Sheriff Stines was involved in that. And Judge Mullins was also accused by Miss Atkins, the person who was making these allegations, of inappropriate behavior as well. So the plot thickens, does it not? Anyway, this woman, who was a former inmate, also alleged that Fields filmed illicit encounters, some of which she claimed involved Judge Mullins. I would love to see that video, not for pleasure, but to see if it actually backs up the allegations that took place. If that's the case, not that you can go around shooting people, but it certainly does make Judge Stines' case much more sympathetic indeed. Anyway, Judge Stines was also mentioned in the legal proceedings just 3 days before the shooting. But like I said, he was sued because he's the sheriff, not because he was accused of engaging in any misconduct directly himself. Anyway, several people have referenced the fact that the deposition may have been a factor in the shooting, but time will tell. Now, Stines has also been a close friends with the judge for almost 30 years, and the pair even had lunch at a local restaurant just prior to the shooting. Now, the Mickey Stines could obviously, like I said, face the death penalty, but there's no indication whether that will take place. It'll probably depend on what evidence comes forth as it relates to these videos and email evidence and text messages. Always have to wait and see. Anyway, there's been no specific mention of any specific evidence, and police have not given any motive of the shooting. But 4 to 6 months, really? How much could these people have to do in this small town? It doesn't take that long to dump a cell phone at all. Even if there's multiple cell phones, it doesn't take long. It takes longer to go through it. But what have they been doing since September? That's what I got to say. Let's speed this thing up. Next, if you can believe it, a poll shows that people are sympathetic to Luigi Mangione. Now, why does that matter? Well, it depends if those people get on a jury, right? So nearly 30% of registered voters believe the shooting death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was wrong. But they understand Luigi Mangione's, the suspect charged with killing Thompson, the anger that he has against health insurance companies, according to a new poll. So a USA Today Suffolk University poll conducted between January 7th through the 11th found 28.50% of the registered voters believe the shooting was wrong, but understand the alleged shooter's anger with the healthcare system. In addition, 64% of registered voters believe the shooting was wrong and the person who did it should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But that still means, ladies and gentlemen, 40% of the potential jurors out there could be sympathetic to Luigi Mangione. Now, the poll of the 1,000 registered voters taken by landline and cell phone has a margin of error of 3.1%, in case you wanted to know that. And another poll found that a majority of college students believe that Mangione should be sentenced to time in prison if he's ultimately convicted. Now, if Mangione is found guilty, according to the poll conducted by the College Pulse, 32% in that survey said that he should be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. 14% chose life imprisonment with a chance of parole. 26% preferred a fixed-term prison sentence, and 2% believed that he should get the death penalty. The remaining people had no idea what anyone was talking about and had no opinion. Meanwhile, another poll from the University of Chicago conducted between December 12th and 16 found that 7 in 10 adults believe the profits or coverage denials by health insurance companies bear a great deal or a moderate amount of responsibility for Thompson's murder. And 8 in 10 adults believe Mangione bears a great deal or moderate amount of blame for the murder. Now, Mangione is currently obviously being held in custody without bail at the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center in New York. Now, prosecutors have indicated the federal and state cases will proceed on parallel tracks, with the state charges likely going first. Mangione's next court date is February 21st, and then we'll see who really gets going. Like I said, it would seem, if you read the comments on Crime Talk, it would seem like about 80% of the people that watch this show love Luigi Mangione and would set him free. Oftentimes, many people say, free Luigi. That is people's opinion. But obviously, the defense is, hey, it wasn't Luigi Mangione, because there's no heat of passion. There's no self-defense or legal defense because you don't like the insurance companies. The only defense is basically identity. You can't say for certain that that is Luigi Mangione. Look at his eyebrows. He had a mask on. He had a jacket that you can buy anywhere. Those shoes, the question is, did they find him in those shoes, that jacket? They have to prove that it was him, not somebody who looked like him, not someone using his identity, but it was, in fact, Luigi Mangione. Next, pardons. Wow. People have heard more about pardons in the last several months than, well, they have since, the last time President Trump left office. As you may recall, last time President Trump left office, there was talk that he would issue blanket pardons. And in fact, lots of people said, oh, you can't do that. That is probably not legal, and it would show that you did something wrong. Well, guess what? President Joe Biden, literally 15 minutes before he was to leave office, pardoned several members of his immediate family, including his brother and sister. Like I said, just minutes before he left office. Now, this announcement came 15 minutes before now President Trump was sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. And the statement was sent out as Biden and Trump stood in the Capitol Rotunda, waiting for the president-elect to take his oath of office. Biden issued preemptive pardons to James Biden, his brother, Sarah Jones Biden, Valerie Biden Owens, John T. Owens, and Francis W. Biden as well. Now, the language in the pardon says the issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that they were engaged in any wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offense, Biden said in his last act as president. Now, his brother James Biden has been pulled into White House impeachment investigations of Joe Biden, which ultimately obviously didn't proceed. However, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer had asked Trump's Justice Department to investigate and prosecute James Biden for allegedly making false statements to Congress about why the family received all that money from Ukraine and China, and yet no one could say what work was ever done or whether it was just payoffs. All right. Now, Biden also pardoned James' wife, Sarah, his sister, Valerie, her husband, John, and his younger brother, Francis Biden. Pardons were sweeping, covering all of their acts, illegal actions dating back to 2014, at least in the federal system. And Biden said his family was subjected to unrelenting attacks and threats motivated solely by desire to hurt him, the worst kind of partisan politics. Can you imagine people going after somebody just for their politics and engaging in lawfare. Could you imagine such a thing? Oh my goodness. Anyway, Biden says, unfortunately, I have no reason to believe these attacks will end. Therefore, he gave the pardons. Now, Chairman Comer said the pardons prove the Biden family is corrupt. President Biden's preemptive pardon for the Biden crime family served as a confession of their corruption as they sold out the American people to enrich themselves. Our investigation revealed that at least 10 members of the Biden crime family and their associates raked in over $30 million by selling Joe Biden's influence to corrupt foreign entities and individuals in China, Russia, Ukraine, Romania, and Kazakhstan. Now, President Biden abused his public office to create a slush fund for his family, and President Biden will go down as the most corrupt president in U.S. history, and our investigation will be remembered as the one of the most successful ever conducted by Congress, the chairman said. Now, back in December, Biden also pardoned his son Hunter after vowing he wouldn't pardon his son Hunter on those gun charges and drug charges and tax charges, IRS tax charges. He did it anyway. And the only family member missing from Monday's list was his wife, Jill, and his daughter, Ashley. Now, earlier Monday, Biden issued preemptive pardons for General Mike Milley, who had his Joint Chief of Staff portrait immediately taken down because he believed that he was in fear of being prosecuted for treasonous acts when he was communicating with the Chinese government at the end of the Biden administration. But guess who also got one? That's right, Dr. Anthony Fauci. You know, the doctor guy said, wear masks. We're going to randomly make up 6 feet. Stay away, social distancing. Oh, he may have also funded and was aware that they were in process of the gain of function research. And then when they knew that it was released from a Chinese lab, he tried to cover it up, blaming it on the old fish market. And guess who also got one? Representative Liz Cheney. That's right, daughter of Dick Cheney, who lost in a landslide in her reelection in Wyoming a couple of years ago. But she, along with everybody else on the January 6th committee, remember the big thing they brought in Hollywood producers to show this is what happened? And it turned out they destroyed everything that they had collected. Yeah, they destroyed it all. Official congressional records destroyed. Anyway, everyone that was on that panel and staffers also got a pardon. Now, you may say, well, that doesn't matter. They were just going to be the subject of this lawfare. You can't read anything into it. It's just to protect everybody. But let me draw your attention, ladies and gentlemen, to a case called Burdick v. United States. You can read it yourself, 236-79. It's a 1915 United States Supreme Court decision. And what does it say? There are substantial differences between legislative immunity and a pardon. The latter carries imputation of guilt, acceptance of a confession of it, while the former is noncommittal and tantamount to silence of the witness. So what does that mean, ladies and gentlemen? If you accept the pardon, you are admitting you are guilty of crimes. Now, normally, remember, like I said, a lot of people said you couldn't give these pardons in advance because normally when somebody gets a pardon, you've had to go through the legal system after charges were filed, a judge found probable cause, and more than likely you were convicted. And then after you serve your sentence, then you seek a pardon, usually after some period of time where you show that you have been rehabilitated, that this was some sort of one-time anomaly, and that it would never happen again. You've redeemed yourself, by like picking up little spiders and taking them outside, becoming the next Mother Teresa. But to say, here it is, I don't care who did it, I think everybody should be a little offended by this. And it's certainly, according to CNN, it's going to leave a huge stain on the Biden White House. Next on the docket, how many times have I said, if you're going to commit crime, leave your phone at home? I know. I say that in jest because I don't want anybody to commit any crime. I really don't. But if you're going to commit crime, don't do it on your phone. They always get your phone. I don't care. I mean, it's getting to the point these days. I don't care what you do. They seize your phone. They get you the information and they got you. Okay? Anything you say can and will be used against you as long as it's relevant to the charges that are there, right? So if you're texting people like this guy, Kevin Ellis, who's facing several charges, including murder and possession of a controlled substance for shooting a guy by the name of Matthew Rastelli 7 times at his home in American Fork, Utah back in July. That's right. Could be a problem. Anyway, Mr. Ellis has claimed he acted in self-defense to protect himself, his sister, and his mother, all of whom were in the house at the time of the shooting. Now, at the time that he was killed, Rastelli was married to Ellis's sister, Catherine Rastelli, and the couple lived in California. But evidence was introduced at a January 14th preliminary hearing. It revealed that Catherine had fled to Utah to stay with her mother, Tracy Grist, intending to get a divorce. Now, Grist and Catherine have been charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder in this case. That's right. So Catherine wants a divorce. Prosecutors say that while Catherine made clear to her family that she wanted to get rid of her marriage, her messages and her husband told a little bit different story. Texts that were read in court records included both saying, "I love you," and making plans for Matthew to come to Utah to drive Catherine back to California. Investigators found an audio recording on the phone of Miss Grist of Catherine speaking to a divorce attorney asking how she could legally refuse to take her children back to California and leave their father. She maintained she was suffering verbal abuse, but said Matthew had never physically harmed her or the children in any way. Unable to get the answers she wanted from the attorney, prosecutors say that Catherine then lured Matthew to her mother's home, saying she would return to California with him, but never had any intention of doing so. In the text messages, Catherine explicitly invites Matthew to her family home and not only gives him the gate code for the community, but also notes that the family door will be left unlocked. Come on in. And then there's more. There's digital evidence. The American Fork detective working the case, Joseph Norton, pretty much laid out the evidence, the digital evidence that investigators had collected from Ellis, Grist, and Catherine's phone. Texts between the three revealed discussions about Catherine's desire to leave her marriage and mentions of her going on a date with someone else, in fact. Catherine's digital search history showed that in the days before Matthew's murder, she searched smitten. How do you tell someone you're talking to that you started dating and it's becoming something? Saved words? And just 40 minutes before her husband was killed. Anyway, Lover as a pet name was also searched. And in the days after Matthew's death, she searched how to say I'm on my period to a guy and 5 ways to get rid of hickeys. Anyway, Grist's search history focused on another family embroiled in the murder plot. Beginning on June 5th, Grist searched for Catherine Magbuana, a key player in the murder of FSU professor Dan Markle. In that case, Markle's former brother-in-law, Charlie Adelson, was convicted of plotting his murder for hire, and Adelson's mother, Donna, is scheduled to stand at trial for the same charges in June. Now, Miss Grist searched for an episode of Dateline focusing on the Adelson family and where was Donna Adelson arrested. Donna was arrested while boarding a flight with a one-way ticket to Vietnam back in November of 2023. Grist also searched queries about taking children over state lines, getting U.S. passports for children, and on July 12th, the date of Matthew's murder, for its happening meme. When police arrived at the scene of the shooting, Ellis told them that he was acting in self-defense when he shot Matthew. Officers noted a knife was in Matthew's hand. Investigators determined, though, that the knife was actually in Matthew's non-dominant hand and soon learned more about it. The detective said that while investigating the small folding knife, he found it was only available from My Tactical Promos. Matthews had no relationship with the company, but Grist had exchanged emails with them confirming an order for a mystery box that would have contained a knife matching the one that was found in Matthew's hand. Now, the judge noted the extensive evidence and discrepancies between Grist and Catherine's account of what had happened, and they were concerned that he was going to be violent when he came in and he was going to be drinking and all the things of that nature. Yet the audio recording that were presented to the court today, the judge said clearly showed to the contrary. Not somebody who was angry or upset or on a mission to cause problems. It was someone just looking forward to what the judge said, to seeing his wife and kids and giving her a hug and kiss and heading back home. Well, Ellis is due back in court on another date for status conference on January 29th, ladies and gentlemen. What do I say about those cell phones, ladies and gentlemen? What do I say? Not encouraging crime. Nope. Not doing it. Not doing it. I'm just saying it is the best piece of evidence against any defendant. Take my word. Next on the docket, Jennifer Crumbley's attorneys say that the prosecutors did her dirty. The attorney for Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of the Oxford High School shooter, alleges that the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office conducted a smear campaign, and they spent at least $100,000 to do it by hiring some public relation firms to do the dirty work. So according to filings, attorney Michael Desi claims that the prosecutor hired two firms, Identity and Moment Strategies, to push a narrative after the shooting. Now, Crumbley and her husband, James Crumbley, were convicted last year of involuntary manslaughter in connection with the November 30th, 2021 shooting that killed Oxford High School students, in which their son was ultimately charged. 6 other students and a teacher were also injured in the shooting. Now, in the month following her conviction, Jennifer Crumbley filed a motion requested for a new trial or the charges to be dropped. She also requested to be released from prison during the appellate process. The attorney, who was appointed as Jennifer Crumbley appellate attorney, also alleges that despite gag orders, prosecutors allowed a Washington Post reporter to have behind-the-scenes access and had an agreement with ABC Studios to produce a documentary that would air on ABC and Hulu. The documentary, called Sins of the Parents, The Crumbley Trials, aired back in April of 2024, more than a week after the Crumbleys were ultimately sentenced. Now, the prosecution picked public relations firms who would promote the prosecution's narrative and allow their handpicked journalists and media organizations into their inner workings. The attorney for Crumbley said all this in filings, and the prosecution invested itself heavily into creating a public support for these charges, which have no basis in the law. Now, I've said that from the beginning, but I didn't know the prosecutor was out there hiring people to do what they cannot ethically do themselves, which is to pitch a narrative to the world. These allegations come as the attorney for Crumbley accused prosecutors of conducting secret deals with star witnesses in the case. However, the Oakland County Chief Assistant Prosecutor David Williams denounced these claims, saying these high school shootings drew immediate national and international attention. False rumors began spreading quickly. Schools across Michigan and across the country were closed because of these false threats. And then the Oakland County Executive and Oakland County Board of Commissioners immediately provided the resources needed to get reliable information to the public and the media. That's almost like if you had somebody, you could pick up the phone and say, hey, don't run this story or run this story. Anyway, the two stories defense counsel references come out of the jury verdicts, not before, and the suggestion that they had any impact on the jury is ridiculous, the prosecutor said. Anyway, Jennifer Crumbley was convicted on what she did and didn't do, and the defense cannot change those facts. The judge explained the law in Michigan, including gross negligence, to the jury, and the jury unanimously convicted her of involuntary manslaughter, and she was convicted of these facts, the prosecutor says. The Crumbleys made history as the first parents to be convicted for a mass shooting committed by their children. Their son Ethan was sentenced to life in prison on the multiple killings, including murder and terrorism, and his attorneys filed a motion seeking to withdraw his guilty plea and have a resentencing. However, the judge said no to that. Everyone kept saying that this was a novel legal defense. Novel legal defense means it's never been done before. It's not specifically in a statute defining an offense. We're just going to throw it out there. Like I said, if the Crumbleys had said, come on, Ethan, did you pack your bag? Do you have everything to go do those terrible things at the school today? I'd be saying they were guilty as a complicitor, maybe even as a co-conspirator. But if we start prosecuting parents for what their children do, ladies and gentlemen, be careful, it's a slippery slope. We're already seeing examples of that as well. Next, an update on that realtor that was killed in North Carolina. A breakthrough has developed in the somewhat gruesome murder of a North Carolina realtor who was found wrapped in bloody bedding inside a townhouse. Now, the body of Charlotte real estate agent Whitney Hurd was discovered in her upscale South Park home last July after she was reported missing by her family. She had been brutally stabbed to death in the chest, according to the autopsy report. And after 6 months without an update, police finally have a lead in the case. Please meet Brandon Braxton, a man with some criminal history. He's been named as a person of interest, according to a search warrant of his home on some unrelated charges. Now, Braxton is currently behind bars at the Mecklenburg County Jail there in North Carolina on unrelated charges. His criminal history includes allegations of misdemeanor larceny, simple assault, injury to real property, and indecent exposure. Now, it is unclear if he has entered a plea in those new charges, and anyway, he's being held there. Now, investigators were building their case in Hurd's murder in regards to Braxton when he was arrested for allegedly stealing a woman and punching a man in the face, adding to obviously his criminal history and why he's in custody. And just months after Hurd's death, Mr. Braxton was arrested again in October, this time for indecent exposure. Well, a search warrant reveals that investigators discovered clothing, shoes, and a knife during a search of Mr. Braxton's property for another unrelated matter. Anyway, a subsequent warrant requesting DNA swabs stated that there was a probable cause that a murder has been committed and that the DNA of Brandon David Braxton is potential evidence in that murder. Now, despite evidence, police have not officially named Mr. Braxton a suspect in Miss Hurd's death as of yet, although he does remain in custody on unrelated charges. Now, Hurd was described by friends as a very vivacious young woman engaged in a very competitive real estate market when she disappeared back in July of 2024. Like I said, her body was found wrapped in a pile of bloody bedding inside her townhouse, and her BMW, which had sparked a citywide search, was recovered a week later under circumstances that the police have kept somewhat quiet. And apparently it may have been a fingerprint. It may have been a fingerprint that ultimately led the authorities to Mr. Braxton. Gonna have to follow that one. That's interesting. And next, give me my TikTok or I will burn the building down. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's true. Somebody actually did that. A Wisconsin teenager was arrested and charged with arson over the weekend after police say he set fire to a local congressman's office and cited the TikTok ban as his reason for trying to burn the building down. So about 1 a.m. on Sunday, January 19th, the city of Fond du Lac Police Department responded to a report of a fire at a local strip mall, which contained the district office of Republican U.S. Representative Glenn Grothman. Now, police were able to put the small fire out with fire extinguishers, and they just happened to notice this 19-year-old man near the strip mall. The teen admitted to starting the fire in response to the TikTok ban, and before being arrested for the arson, he basically confessed. Now he is being held at the Fond du Lac County Jail and will be referred to the Fond du Lac County District Attorney's Office for potential filing of charges. Now, fortunately, at the time, the building was unoccupied because we know how quickly fire can spread and can kill people as well. Fortunately, there were no injuries. Now, the politician at issue voted for the bill last April that mandated that ByteDance, the Chinese owners of TikTok, where they had to sell a certain percentage of the app to not be controlled by the Communist Party of China. And the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, had ruled that on January 17th that the law forcing TikTok to cease U.S. operations if it didn't divest of its communist Chinese ownership was in fact constitutional. The sell or ban legislation was previously passed and signed by President Biden. And after President-elect Donald Trump revealed a plan to ban TikTok from operating in the U.S. during his first term back in 2020. But following the Supreme Court ruling, TikTok shut down. And then on January 18th, returned less than 24 hours later after the platform shared in a statement that it was process of restoring service for Americans, and that they were thanking President-elect Trump for basically saying he wasn't going to enforce the ban as of yet, and there was going to give a stay. The moral of the story, ladies and gentlemen, don't burn down other people's property. It's an app, for God's sakes. And the unidentified juvenile, he may be going someplace where he doesn't get a phone, so he's not going to have to worry about getting his TikTok now, is he? Next, this day in legal history, January 20th, 1920, the founding of the American Civil Liberties Union. Now, the ACLU was established originally to defend and preserve individual rights and liberties guaranteed by the Constitution. You remember these guys. These guys were all about civil liberties, protecting the Constitution. Remember, they had the Jewish attorneys representing the Nazis for marching in Skokie. That's what they used to do. Now, they're not so much all about the Constitution, but that's my own personal narrative. One of the reasons why I don't belong to the ACLU, because apparently it depends on your political beliefs, not the defense of the Constitution. And ladies and gentlemen, I assure you, I represent people who have done terrible, terrible things, but they deserve a right to representation and have their rights protected under the United States Constitution. Next, on this date in 1937, the first presidential inauguration on January 20th took place. Well, why? Well, President Franklin D. Roosevelt was inaugurated for his second term, becoming the first U.S. president sworn into office on January 20th. The change resulted from the ratification of the 20th Amendment, which moved the presidential inauguration date from March 4th to January 20th, reducing the lame duck period, because obviously he was trying to get his New Deal stuff passed through Congress. And next, on this date in 1986, it was the first federal observance of the MLK. That's right, the Martin Luther King holiday. Remember, have people be judged upon the content of their character, not the color of their skin. That is what I always grew up with, ladies and gentlemen. And back on this date in 2011, a mafia takedown. That's right. The federal agents charged 127 suspected mobsters and associates in the Northeast in crime, including murder and extortion, making it one of the largest mafia takedowns in FBI history. Ah, the good old days when the FBI just went after the mob. And finally, our dumb criminal of the day. A Boca Raton attorney is in custody, or was yesterday, in Palm Beach County after witnesses allege a violent prime rib incident. That's right. Apparently this took place at the Boca Lago Country Club, and apparently there was a wedding reception, and it is alleged that Mark Roher, R-O-H-E-R, is being held for a charge of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. Witnesses allege that the arrest stems from the reaction when a group of young girls allegedly cut in front of the attorney to get to the prime rib. Anyway, it's then alleged that Mr. Roher became angry and threatened, leading a wedding guest to have to intervene. Mr. Roher allegedly then strangled the guest and held a plate over the person's head, then threatened to kill that person. A country club member intervened, took the plate away, and ultimately called the police. Now, Mr. Roher is a self-described bankruptcy and a commercial litigation attorney. Doesn't look like he's ever been in trouble before and has a clean record with the Bar Association, but clearly was having a bad day when those kids cut in front of you at the prime rib line. Apparently he wanted the end where it was nice and, you know, the end of the prime rib is the best, right? He wanted it. I don't know what to tell you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time on Crime Talk. And remember, the Constitution matters.